The announcement came suddenly. A grand assembly at the Palace of Lumina, the heart of the Andralis system. Word spread quickly across the planets that the Queen of Andralis, revered for centuries for her intelligence, ruthlessness, and sheer authority, would address the populace in a rare public appearance. I was a historian and cultural researcher, sent to witness and document the speech. Others prepared for political maneuvering, bribery, and power plays. Entire delegations of alien dignitaries traveled light years to attend. Rumors swirled. The Queen was planning a declaration that could alter the fate of the entire Andralis sector. I arrived early, among a sea of beings from every corner of the galaxy. The hall itself was a marvel. Towers of crystalline architecture reflecting starlight, platforms floating in midair, and energy conduits that pulsed with a soft hum, as though the building itself were alive. I took my place near the front, notebook in hand. Beside me were humans, Varelians, Andari, and species whose names I could barely pronounce. The air was tense with anticipation, whispers mixing with the hum of energy. And then she appeared. The Queen of Andralis entered with a presence that could not be ignored. Her height, elegance, and shimmering cerulean robes radiated authority. Her eyes glowed faintly, scanning the crowd as if she could peer into every mind. She raised her hand, and the hall fell silent instantly. No sound, no movement, as if time itself had paused. I, along with the thousands of delegates, felt a wave of something almost physical, a pressure of absolute command. And then she spoke. One sentence. Leave if your intentions are not pure. The effect was immediate. Gasps echoed. Delegates froze, then bolted. Some screamed, others fainted. The hall emptied in minutes. I, however, remained. I had come not for political gain but to observe, to understand. I had nothing to hide. She regarded me with sharp curiosity. You stayed. I nodded, uncertain how to respond. I wanted to understand. I didn't come here with any agenda. Her eyes softened, just slightly. Few have that courage or that honesty. Over the following days, I learned why the Queen's sentence had such an effect. Andralis was ruled by a combination of political power and psychic authority. The Queen's words carried weight not merely in sound, but in resonance. To lie, cheat, or carry ill will in her presence was to face an instinctive, almost uncontrollable fear. Entire crowds could be dispersed, entire rebellions crushed, with but a single statement, if intention was perceived as impure. I, being a historian and human, had no hidden agendas. My motivations were curiosity, documentation, and observation. That clarity shielded me from the psychic effect that drove others away. The Queen spoke to me privately for the first time in the palace's inner sanctum. Crystalline walls reflected our figures in fractals of light. You are human, she said. Yet you did not flee when all others did. Why? I don't think I have a reason to fear you, I replied honestly. I want to understand your people, your society, the forces that hold it together. Not to exploit them, just to learn. A faint smile crossed her face. Honesty, it is rarer than courage in the Andralis sector. I will test you. The test was subtle at first. She led me to chambers where entire civilizations' histories were encoded in holographic archives. You will interpret these, she said. Some contain truths, others deception. You must discern without guidance. Do so correctly, and you will learn more than any human has in a century. I spent hours, days even, deciphering layers of holographic records. Some archives were straightforward, wars, treaties, migrations. Others were paradoxes, embedded with psychic manipulations designed to mislead intruders. I realized quickly that understanding Andralis meant more than logic or deduction. It required empathy, perception, and a willingness to embrace discomfort. The queen observed silently. Sometimes she corrected me, sometimes she did nothing. Occasionally, she would speak one sentence that clarified a puzzle, then vanish without explanation. Her approach was alien, yet I began to grasp it. She did not simply rule. She sculpted understanding, tested intentions, and refined perception. Weeks later, the real challenge arrived. A political faction, opposed to her rule, had secretly infiltrated the palace. Their goal was assassination, or at least destabilization. I was assigned as an observer, technically not part of security, but I knew my presence would be scrutinized. The queen convened a council. In the main hall, holographic projections displayed the palace's defenses, the layout of the corridors, and potential breach points. My role was ostensibly to record, but instinctively I contributed. I noticed inconsistencies in the faction's projected movements, subtle errors that even experienced security officers overlooked. "You perceive what others cannot," the queen remarked later, as we walked along a balcony overlooking the city. "Few see patterns. Fewer still interpret them correctly." The attempt on her life began at dawn. Guards clashed with intruders. Energy pulses lit the halls in bright arcs. I followed from a distance, noting strategies and outcomes. When the assailants reached a heavily shielded corridor, the queen appeared, not on a balcony, not in person, but projected as a psychic hologram. Her voice, calm yet firm, echoed, "Leave if your hearts are impure." The assailants froze. Confusion rippled through them. Then, one by one, they fled. Not a single life was lost, but the attempted coup ended in minutes. Later, in the aftermath, she approached me. "You witnessed what most could not," she said. "Not the technology, not the forces, but the subtle influence of intent. You have survived because your mind is clear." "I didn't even realize it was a test," I admitted. She smiled faintly. "That is the point. One can only measure character in situations of subtle, unperceived pressure. You passed because you did not know it was a test. That is honesty." Over the next months, I became a regular presence in the palace, documenting history, observing the council, and slowly understanding the depth of her influence. She allowed me insight into her strategies, revealing how she maintained peace across dozens of worlds, how she balanced power without tyranny, and how she inspired loyalty and fear simultaneously. I learned that her single sentence that had emptied the hall was not mere intimidation. It was a precise psychological instrument, tuned to detect deceit, malice, and hidden agendas. Those who fled were not merely scared, they were revealed. Yet she also taught me that strength was not only the ability to inspire fear. It was the patience to understand, the wisdom to wait, and the capacity to value those who might appear weak, yet possess clarity of heart and mind. The final culmination came when a neighboring galaxy threatened the Andralis sector with invasion. Alliances teetered, fleets mobilized, the queen prepared for conflict. I was invited to witness the council's deliberations. "What is required, Alex?" she asked quietly, "is perception. Not of tactics, but of intention. Can you see who desires peace and who desires conquest?" I observed, carefully noting words, body language, and hidden signals. Using the insights I had gained from months in her presence, I correctly predicted the faction's loyalties and strategies. When my assessments were verified, the queen nodded approvingly. "You have learned well," she said. "You see beyond the surface. That is why you stayed when all others fled. That is why you understand Andralis." I realized then that surviving the queen's sentence, witnessing her authority, and understanding her methods had transformed me. I was no longer a simple historian or observer. I had gained insight into leadership, ethics, and the subtle dynamics that govern life on a galactic scale. Years later, I still recall that day vividly. The Queen spoke one sentence, and the crowd fled. Only I remained. That moment was terrifying, awe-inspiring, and transformative all at once. It taught me that clarity, honesty, and courage could withstand the most subtle forms of power. It taught me that the human mind, while untrained in psychic arts or galactic influence, could still perceive truth where others faltered. And perhaps most importantly, it taught me that history is not merely recorded in events, battles, or proclamations. It is written in choices, those moments when courage meets clarity, when honesty confronts power, and when one human dares to remain while all others flee. I stayed. And because I stayed, I learned truths that no human before me had understood. The Queen's sentence was not just authority, it was revelation. And in the end, the galaxy did not just survive because of her power, it survived because of a human who remained.